Hi everyone. I hope you guys enjoyed Made with Love and Yainin. So today we will have a live Q&A with the directors, Sophia Lee and Champ Ensminger. Cool. Hi guys, thanks for coming on.
Hi,
So
thanks for having us.
Yes. So first I have a few questions for Sophia, the director of Made with Love. So the first question I have is, while watching your documentary, I was like, wow, this is such a unique family and it's such an interesting story. How did you first get connected or hear about this family of restaurateurs, and how did you get started with this documentary?
Okay. Well, I first heard about this family through my mom. We had been through Convoy, which is where all these restaurants are, and we'd heard about this family before because they're kind of known in the area. So I just looked into it and I looked at their websites and I contacted them, and a few of them were willing to be interviewed. So that's where it got started. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. And our second question is, when directing this documentary, how did you end up picking these specific people and these specific restaurants? Because kind of like in that plaza, there were so many different restaurants, and also one of the first people you interviewed, she had also mentioned many different restaurants. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, a lot of it was about availability. We went to a lot of different people who weren't willing to be interviewed, but like that's just how it is with documentaries sometimes. And I knew that I wanted to get at least one traditional Korean restaurant and then one restaurant that was more modern or like a fusion take on Korean food. So that's where I ended up with like the last restaurant and then the first two.
Gotcha. Cool. That's really interesting. Thank you. Cool. Now we have a few questions for Champ. Cool. So for me, I grew up eating naem, so I was so surprised when I saw that the documentary was about a naem factory. But it's not super popular or common here in the States, at least to my understanding. Why did you choose to follow the matriarch of a naem factory?
I think it helps my family with this very close. She's my grandmother. And I was born in Chiang Mai, and she's sort of the family matriarch, and she's come to visit in the States. A lot of my family is up here in Washington State, and so she and my late grandfather would be back and forth all the time. And it was kind of slowly realizing growing up that naem was kind of our family's claim to fame, and it was it's sort of an institution in northwest Thailand. It used to be a lot more prominent when it was sold down in Bangkok and elsewhere, like the border with Burma and places like that. But it's been scaled down a little bit, and naem is, as you said, is kind of a delicacy. It's like it's definitely an old style of food, regionally specific to Chiang Mai. But I just thought that was really unique. And then she's just a really interesting personality. She's an 80-something-year-old entrepreneur, basically, and I think just her energy at her age is just really interesting to capture. Not just like interpersonal relationships with her as my grandmother, but also just kind of her attitude as you reflect it on a lot of that just kind of doting grandmother. And so I had been planning on doing a documentary about her for a little bit. I lived in Chiang Mai in 2014, 2015, and was doing a little bit of documentary work there. And eventually I came back to Seattle, and I decided it was about time to talk about her. And my context with food, especially in general, when I was growing up in the States, I was a restaurant kid along with my cousins. So you kind of get that interesting dynamic of family / employees. There's kind of a blur, in those lines, because you're so familiar with each other, especially if it's all Thai speakers or other, kind of like Pan-Asian friends and family, and you become kind of a family unit around this business. So that was something that I wanted to capture.
Gotcha. Wow, that's really cool. I had thought that she might have been your grandmother because of the scene at the very end, but I was unsure. So that's really cool. Thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah.
So sorry. So you had mentioned that you were born in Chiang Mai, and in your director's bio, and now you also mentioned that you had spent some time living there as well. What was it like going back to a place where you were born? to create a documentary. What were your favorite parts of working in Chiang Mai, and were there any cultural barriers for you?
Man, I have so much to unpack about that. Growing up mainly in the States, I kind of absorbed my Thai culture from my mother's side of the family and all of our cousins. And we grew up watching our parents watch soap operas and like Thai TV and stuff like that. And we would absorb a lot of the culture and the language, but have a hard time trying to project it back out. Because I guess, growing up in Spokane, Washington specifically, it's a very small Thai demographic, as well as other ethnic minorities in Spokane. But yeah, and I think we just kind of had this idea for a long time of what being in Thailand was like, until we finally, me and my cousins would eventually go back for family, or I ended up living there for a good chunk of time and just kind of rediscovering our culture that way. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you kind of just, it's like riding a bicycle, or just like these like instinctual things that you get familiar with, like socially, culturally, but also a lot of language barriers and cultural barriers too. So we kind of live in that middle area, and negotiating those while living there was interesting and sometimes a challenge, but it was a big benefit to go through that to make this documentary the way that I wanted to make it, which was to try and show a side of Thai culture that is authentic and that you don't really see very often in, tourism guides, or, the perception of Thailand around the world is like very specific things, and namely food. And I think it was good to show people a weird, like a strange, like unknown kind of Thai food that people can be like, I've never really heard that before. So that was just kind of food is definitely the hook to that story, but it's also just trying to show like a family dynamic that is actually pretty common in what I feel like is a shared aspect of a lot of Asian cultures, is just how familiar you get with, family and friends who work around the same place together. And what was interesting, was the linguistic challenge. My grandmother speaks a dialect of Thai that is very regionally specific as well, and she's kind of the last speaker in our family of that language. And one goal for this documentary was to have her speaking that, to be able to sort of preserve it for posterity. And the way that I kind of got through a lot of the challenges of language, because I can speak it and understand it, but I can't read it, and I was a little nervous that I couldn't get the translations done, authentically and all the way through. So my mother was actually the interviewer, and we did we went through a process of pre-interviewing. I pre-interviewed my mother, so we knew what questions to ask in context with their relationship to each other, and just to get the most time out of the production that we had, because we only had 3 days to film that. And we had a crew that was amazing from Bangkok. That was probably one of my favorite things about filming locally in Thailand, was that the crew was awesome. I think it's kind of a thing spoken about in production scenes in Asia, that Thai crews are actually one of the best, because you can have a skeleton crew of like a DP and then a couple grips, and they can get a lot done. And being with them for 3 really long days was proof that they could hold it down. And my grandmother was like a great, she was kind of like the location scout before everything started, to like, hit up friends at the markets to see where we could film, and, get her driver to like look for parking and all that stuff. And so she was kind of the production coordinator for her own documentary, which was really fun to work with her on that. And it was, and working on something in Thailand feels less of like an official like shoot and more of like a group family experience. Like, my grandma would feed all of the crew each day of the shoot, and it'd be this very familiar thing, and that was really rewarding for me.
Wow, that's really cool. That's super exciting hearing how you're both able to work but also have that family bonding experience as well. That's really cool. On the note of having your mom kind of act like a translator, now I'm interested in asking you, Sophia, with your film. I know with the third restaurant, you had one of your interviewees, she also spoke Korean. How was that like for you?
I mean, I actually had the same situation where my mom was the translator. I speak a little bit of Korean, but like not too well. So that was kind of a challenge for me, because I didn't fully understand some of the stuff that she was saying. But like luckily my mom was there too, and I went through the same process where I like before the interview I told her like this is the kind of question that I want, and like this is the kind of answer that I could be looking for. So yeah, that definitely helped.
Yes, that's awesome. Cool. So one more question I have for both of you actually is, what is your hope for your respective documentaries, and what do you want your audience to take from your documentaries?
I think it really comes from a genuine place of wanting to depict this relationship that we have with our grandmother. I kind of tailored the film to be a sort of, not a sweeping like biography about her, but more of just like a visit with her and this type of, maternal figure that I think a lot of Asian Americans and Pan-Asian cultures in general can identify with, especially as immigrants, that everybody kind of situates themselves around a mother or father figure because that's the person that's pioneering or kind of paving ground for them. And then also for, I guess, American friends back home, just showing a family dynamic that they'd never really seen before.
And then for me, I think that I just want to show the importance of food and bringing families together, because I feel like it's such a big part of Asian culture, especially that you're bonding over food and it's like recipes passed down through generations. And it was so important to hear those stories and see a generation of like restaurateurs and see someone whose mother taught them all of their recipes. And I just found that so heartwarming. So
both of those messages are super important. So thank you for making your documentaries. Just a few more quick questions. One, maybe some of our audience might not have been able to see this screening of your documentaries. Are there any other spaces that you guys are screening your documentaries?
Yeah, I am working with, I guess, Austin Film Fest. We're going to be in Texas for a little bit longer, or I guess Texas virtual space. So Austin Asian American Film Fest is our next screening. And then we're just kind of seeing where else it lives in the current situation that we're in now, where it's a lot of virtual or otherwise festivals. But you can follow the documentary on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at 𝗪𝗱𝗮.
I'm not entirely sure, but it should be on the website for the San Diego Asian Film Festival, because I actually made this documentary through a program that they were holding. But for festivals, I'm not entirely sure right now.
Cool, thank you. And can you guys maybe share with us a little bit more about upcoming projects? And also, can you share I guess you guys did a little bit, but once again, share your social media handles so people can keep updated with y'all's work.
Yeah, as far as other projects, I'm right now just I put a lot of effort into the production and the festival run in general for this doc. So I'm enjoying where it lives in the world right now. So I'm just kind of being very present for that. I would love to shoot something else in Thailand. So hopefully once we're able to travel, then we'll go back and shoot something. And in the meantime, yeah, just kind of holding it down. Yeah, aside from 𝗪𝗱𝗮, if anyone is wanting to follow me personally, my Instagram handle is French Fried Rice.
Personal projects for me, I'm actually still in high school, so college applications right now. That's really fun. And then for my personal Instagram, if you want to follow me, it's written on the screen, but it's Sophia Lee with an extra A and an extra E.
Cool. I think that's all the time we have, but thank you so much, Sophia and Champ, for your time, for answering our questions, and for sharing your documentaries with us. And to the audience, we're going to take a 15-minute break right now, but be sure to join us after the 15-minute break to watch The Last Stitch. Yes. Thank you.